Night within the lab of stitched corpses. The rain fell in cold, endless sheets that night, drumming upon the rusted metal roof of a forgotten asylum nestled deep within the forest rotten heart. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating broken windows taped with black plastic and vines crawling up brick walls like veins upon diseased flesh. Samuel Kersey pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders, water pouring from its edges as he approached the building's warped iron doors. The wind howled through gaps in the crumbling stone, carrying with it the sweet sick stench of mold, decaying wood, and something older, something that smelled of crypts left sealed for centuries. He paused at the threshold, lantern flickering in his hand. The dim glow cast trembling shadows across the door's surface. Deep grooves scarred the metal, claw marks, he realized with a chill, though no creature born of natural womb could have left gouges so wide or so deep. They say no man returns from this place sane, that those who enter wake screaming each night for the rest of their brief. Broken lives, babbling of gods stitched together from the dead, and eyes that watch from rotting faces with human terror trapped behind them. But Samuel was not a man to turn away from forbidden knowledge. His life's work had led him here to uncover what had truly happened in the secret experiments of Dr. Vallicourt, a surgeon priest excommunicated from every holy order for crimes so vile they were struck from Scripture. Whispers claimed he had defied death itself, seeking to build a living God from pieces of the damned. Samuel pressed against the doors. They groaned open with a scream of rusted hinges, the sound slicing through the rain-soaked silence. Darkness yawned before him, a void that swallowed the lantern's light hole. He stepped inside. The air was colder within, thick with a damp, coppery reek. The walls were lined with peeling gray paint, curling like burnt skin. Water dripped from overhead pipes onto cracked tile floors strewn with shattered glass vials, stained gauze, and old surgical saws black with dried blood. Lightning flared beyond the broken windows, illuminating the vast chamber ahead. Tables lay scattered in chaotic rows, each bearing a corpse in various states of mutilation. Some bodies were flayed open, ribs splayed wide to reveal rotting lungs soaked in black resin. Others were missing limbs, replaced with mismatched arms or legs crudely stitched with tarred twine. Their faces were covered with linen veils stained brown with old blood. But beneath the gauze, he could see them twitching, lips moving in silent prayers to gods who would never hear. Samuel's breath caught in his chest as he stepped forward, boots crunching across shards of bone, scattered like spilled rice grains across the tiles. Vallicourt, he whispered, the name tasting like grave dust upon his tongue. What did you create here? And why do the dead still whisper your name? From the far end of the chamber, hidden in shadows so deep the lantern's glow could not reach, something moved. And in that instant, Samuel felt it, the gaze of eyes that could not die, watching him with terror and hunger. The lost visitor, Samuel, enters the heart of the horror. Samuel forced his feet to move, each step echoing across cracked tiles littered with bone fragments and rusted scalpels. His lantern's glow quivered in his trembling grip, casting mad shadows that writhed along the walls like flayed spirits clawing for escape. He walked between rows of surgical tables, the stench of resin-soaked flesh thickening with each breath. Bodies lay silent upon iron slabs, their torsos split open and held apart by metal spreaders. Some chests had been emptied entirely, ribs stripped of organs and lined with dark tar that gleamed wetly in the flickering light. Others still cradled rotting lungs, livers, and hearts preserved in black formalin that oozed onto the floor in glistening puddles. Samuel paused beside one table. A corpse lay there, or what remained of one. Its torso was massive, the shoulders broad and muscular, but its head was small. The skull shaved and stitched to the thick neck with black sinew. The skin of the face was pale and dry, stretched tight over sharp cheekbones, lips sewn shut with copper wire. Resin had been poured into its eye sockets, preserving the shriveled orbs within. As he leaned closer, he saw tears trapped beneath the resin, small beads of liquid glinting like pearls of agony. He turned away, bile rising to burn his throat. On the far wall hung iron hooks bearing dozens of severed arms and legs, each tagged with curling parchment marked in Valicourt's elegant looping script. Samuel raised his lantern to read. Subject 47A, arm of murderer, strength notable. Subject 53D, left leg of none, pliability excellent. Subject 71F, torso of infanticide, organ viability low. His vision blurred with sick horror as he scanned each label, a litany of sins and stolen flesh curated for some purpose beyond human comprehension. Lightning flashed beyond the windows, illuminating a massive steel door at the chamber's end. Its surface was etched with alchemical glyphs, blackened by soot, their meaning half-erased by rust and age. Something pulsed behind it. A low, throbbing vibration pressed against the air, rattling the lantern glass. Samuel felt it sink into his bones, a rhythm too slow for any living heart, yet carrying a power that made his teeth ache. The sound was joined by another, a faint, ragged wheeze that scraped across the silence like broken glass dragged across stone. A breath, wet, guttural, endless, Samuel's pulse hammered in his neck. His lantern flickered, light dancing wildly across the glyph-etched steel as the breathing grew louder, filling the chamber with a tremulous, corpse-warm air. Beneath it, he heard something else, a whisper woven from a dozen ragged voices, rasping in perfect unison. "Come, see what we have become." His knees weakened, nearly buckling beneath him. The lantern rattled violently in his hand, and tears welled in his eyes as a truth clawed its way up from the depths of his mind. Whatever lay behind that steel door was not dead, not alive, but something else. Something stitched together from agony and madness, waiting in the dark to be worshipped. The legend of Valacourt, architect of the stitched god. Samuel's breath came in ragged gasps as he pressed his back against the blood-smeared tiles, staring at the steel door that pulsed with that slow, inhuman rhythm. His mind clawed for reason amid the rising tide of horror, and fragments of forbidden history surfaced like bloated corpses in stagnant water. Dr. Matthew Valacourt, born to a family of apothecaries in Lyon in 1692, Valacourt showed brilliance from youth. By 16, he had memorized Galen, Paracelsus, and the anatomical treatises of Vesalius. But his true obsession lay not with curing the living, but conquering the final border all men fear: death. He became a surgeon priest in the Black Order of St. Lazarus, notorious for treating plague victims abandoned by civil physicians. There, he learned how bodies rot, how tendons slip from bone, how lungs collapse under black fluid, how eyes glaze into windows of silent despair. Yet he saw not horror, but potential. For he believed decay was simply imperfection in God's design. In secret journals smuggled from Paris to Prague, he wrote, "If God's works falter, must not man repair them? If death steals the righteous, must we not take them back, banished after excommunication for blasphemous dissections of plague-dead priests?" Valacourt disappeared from official records, but shadow chronicles spoke of him traveling east to Moldavia and Wallachia, where he studied under Shindre, necromancers, and plague witches, learning rites to preserve flesh beyond decay. By 1730, he resurfaced here in this forest asylum, purchased under a false noble's title. Locals whispered of wagons arriving at midnight, covered in tarpaulins that dripped blood onto frozen roads. Graveyards emptied overnight. Criminals condemned to death vanished from public squares before execution could be carried out. Even plague pits were desecrated, their corpses dragged away in silence. For years he worked in secret, stitching bodies together beneath flickering oil lamps, soaking them in vats of lotus, resin, and black honey to keep their flesh pliable. But his goal was not mere reanimation. Valacourt believed that if he combined enough bodies of the damned, murderers, rapists, infanticides, he could forge a vessel strong enough to hold the essence of divinity itself. His final journal, smuggled out by a terrified assistant who later gouged out his own eyes with hot iron tongs, read, "To build a god is to build a prison strong enough to hold it. 12 sinners, 12 deaths, 12 sacrifices to create one immortal beyond pain or mercy." Lightning flashed beyond the barred windows, illuminating shelves lined with flasks containing pickled eyes and tongues. The breathing beyond the steel door quickened, echoing through the chamber in a ragged, corpse-warm breeze. The whispers rose again, woven with the voices of men, women, and children alike. "Come, see what we have become." Samuel's tears ran hot down his cheeks as he realized the truth behind Valicourt's madness. He had succeeded, and whatever waited behind that door was no longer human, no longer dead, no longer bound by any god man dared worship. It was something new, something stitched into eternity. Entering the lab, confronting the stitched god with trembling hands, Samuel grasped the iron handle of the massive steel door. Cold seeped into his skin, biting through glove and flesh, sinking into his bones. He twisted the lock. Metal screeched against metal, a shrill cry of rusted hinges that clawed the silence apart. The smell struck him first, a choking wave of rotting flowers, rancid resin, and the sour-sweet stench of flesh long denied decay. His lantern's glow spilled into the chamber beyond, illuminating an expanse of darkness so vast it seemed to swallow the flickering light whole. Slowly, he stepped forward. The room stretched wide, lined with stone benches bearing dozens of corpses sewn into grotesque mockeries of life. Some were suspended upright by iron hooks driven through their clavicles, heads slumped forward, lips stitched shut with black wire. Others lay sprawled upon marble slabs, torsos split open, organs removed and replaced with bundles of dark roots bound in oozing resin. And at the center, looming in shadows that shivered with each lightning flash beyond shattered windows, hung the stitched god. Chains thicker than Samuel's arms anchored it to the vaulted ceiling, suspending its massive body a few feet above the blood-slick floor. Its torso was built from at least 12 different men and women, each limb grafted from another corpse. Wide, rotting shoulders bore arms so long their fingers brushed the tiles beneath. Its chest rose and fell with ragged, uneven breaths, ribs straining against yellowed flesh, sutured tight with black sinew. But its head, a cluster of faces had been sewn together, jaws torn away, and stitched into new, gaping maws that curved around the monstrous skull like a crown of screaming mouths. Eyelids fluttered across a dozen mismatched eyes, each iris a different shade, some milky with rot, others glistening with terrified, fevered awareness. Samuel clapped a hand over his mouth, bile burning his throat as tears welled in his eyes. One of the heads, a woman's face sewn beneath the stitched cluster, twitched violently. Her clouded blue eyes snapped open to stare at him, wide with agony. "Kill me," she rasped. The words tore from a throat sewn sideways to another neck. Her voice bubbling with old blood and fluid that dripped down onto her bare chest. Lightning blazed through the chamber, illuminating the horror in stark, blinding clarity. Resin oozed from its wounds like black sap from butchered trees. The breathing deepened, rattling out from half a dozen mouths in shuddering, discordant gasps. And then he heard it, a voice that rose from every stitched throat, echoing through the cavernous hall, vibrating through stone and bone alike. "I am not death." The eyes flicked toward him, moving as one. Tears spilled from them, mingling with rivulets of resin. "I am the God he made of us." Samuel fell to his knees, lantern clattering beside him, its flame guttering in the damp air. Horror and grief warred within his chest as the stitched mass shuddered on its chains, its many mouths parting in a scream that tore through the hall. "Help us." The hand of the God, touching the stitched divinity. The scream of the stitched God reverberated through the chamber, rattling dust from the vaulted stone ceiling. Its many mouths twisted in anguish, lips torn and leaking resin-black blood onto the tiled floor below. Chains groaned under its convulsions, iron links straining as massive shoulders heaved and rippled beneath layers of stitched flesh. Samuel cowered, arms shielding his face as the chorus of agony washed over him. Tears streamed down his cheeks, hot with terror and grief. When the scream finally faded, replaced by ragged, shuddering breaths, he lowered his gaze. The lantern's flickering glow revealed its massive right hand, an impossible appendage stitched together from 6 separate arms. The fingers were long and skeletal, their knuckles gnarled and gray, some tipped with chipped lacquered nails, others with blackened stumps where nails had fallen away. Tendons writhed beneath translucent skin, thick with branching blue veins that pulsed faintly in time with the creature's labored breathing. And then it moved. One long, corpse-white finger twitched, scraping against the blood-slicked tiles with a sound like bone drawn across a gravestone. Slowly, with painful, jerking motions, the hand lifted, fingers unfurling with sickening pops as half-fused joints broke apart under the strain. Resin dripped from torn seams where the wrists of each stitched arm met, pattering onto the floor in black droplets that steamed faintly in the cold air. Samuel's heart thundered in his chest. He felt his body move without his will, drawn forward by something deeper than curiosity, something older, a compulsion woven into his flesh by terror and awe alike. He stepped closer, boots crunching upon scattered shards of bone and broken scalpel blades. The stitched god's eyes, dozens of them in all colors and states of rot, locked onto him. Tears welled within those milky orbs, trembling on blistered lashes before falling in rivulets down stitched cheeks. Its massive hand reached outward, trembling, fingers curling slightly as though begging for his touch. He paused an arm's length away, lantern trembling in his grip. The creature's breaths came faster now, rattling through its many mouths in overlapping moans that rose and fell like the chants of a death cult praying to a silent god. Its fingers twitched again, palm opening fully. Samuel swallowed the bile burning in his throat. Tears blurred his vision as he reached out with his free hand, fingers outstretched. "What are you?" he whispered, his voice cracking with grief and horror. A dozen mouths parted, and a chorus of voices, men, women, and children, woven together in endless torment, spoke as one. "We are what He made us. We are God. We are." Damned. His fingertips brushed its palm. The skin was cold, slick. Beneath it, he felt muscle twitch, tendons convulsing as the hand closed slightly around his own. A scream rose in his chest, but died behind clenched teeth as his mind was flooded with images. Fire-lit operating tables. Valicourt's masked face streaked with blood. Screams echoing through stone halls. Surgeons chanting blasphemies while stitching corpses together with tarred twine. And beneath it all, a voice whispering, "Build me, build me, build me. I will never die." Samuel tore his hand away with a ragged sob. The creature's fingers twitched, reaching for him again with trembling desperation. "Free us," it moaned, tears dripping onto the tiles below. "Or join us." Lightning flashed, casting the stitched faces in stark relief, and in that searing illumination, Samuel saw what waited for him should he fail to leave this place alive. The stitched god awakens, eyes that do not belong to this world. The lantern flickered wildly in Samuel's trembling grip, its weak glow casting mad shadows across the vaulted chamber. Before him, the stitched god convulsed, chains creaking and rattling as its massive, corpse-fused body writhed in spasms that shook dust from the stone ceiling high above. Its many eyes fluttered open fully, no longer clouded in half-conscious torment, but gleaming with something deeper, darker, a sentience that had slumbered for centuries and now rose, unfurling like black wings within rotting flesh. Lightning cracked beyond the shattered windows, illuminating every terrible detail. Each eye gleamed with unnatural clarity, blue irises streaked with spiderwebs of crimson veins, brown eyes filmed with tears of resin. One emerald green eye burned with feverish light, its pupil contracting to a needle-thin slit as it locked onto Samuel. For a heartbeat, all fell silent. Then the mouths opened, a dozen lips stitched across mismatched cheeks, tearing apart in unison, resin-black blood pouring down chins and throats. The voices rose in a single note of agony and exultation, vibrating through the stones, rattling scalpels upon nearby benches, and shaking Samuel's bones so violently he nearly dropped his lantern. "We are awake." The words echoed with such force his ears rang with pain. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the cold sweat dripping from his brow. The creature's hand reached for him again, massive fingers curling with renewed strength. "You, who walks alone, hear us." The chorus splintered into layers, male voices deep as grave earth, women's voices trembling with tears, and children's voices high and broken. They rose and fell, weaving around each other in a chant that twisted reality with every syllable. He built us to hold what the world could not, to be God, to be death, to be beyond. The emerald eye fixed upon Samuel widened, its pupil dilating as the voices fell silent. A single mouth parted, lips blistered and blackened with resin burns, and it spoke alone, its voice impossibly deep and resonant, echoing with something that was not human. "Free us from him." Samuel gasped. "From who?" The stitched mouths convulsed in silent sobs before answering in one rumbling, rattling exhale. "Valacourt lives within us. He is the God now." Lightning flared once more, blinding white searing across the stitched faces. For a heartbeat, Samuel saw it, not merely a creature of sewn corpses, but a throne of flesh upon which a single mind sat crowned in agony and triumph. He staggered backward, bile rising in his throat. His lantern swung wide, light cutting across benches piled with jars of preserved organs and racks of stitched limbs. The chanting resumed, louder now, shaking loose motes of ancient dust from crumbling stone. The stitched god's hand lashed forward, fingers curling around Samuel's chest with corpse-cold strength. The grip forced the air from his lungs in a ragged gasp as he dropped the lantern. It shattered upon the tiles, plunging the chamber into flickering shadows cast by its dying flame. Dozens of eyes locked onto his face, and within each gleamed not just pain, but hunger. Join us. The words rumble through his bones as the stitched god lifted him from the blood-slick floor, bringing him closer to its fused, weeping faces, closer to eyes that did not belong to this world, or any god mankind should ever worship. The whisper of the god, promises of eternal power. The grip of the stitched god tightened around Samuel's chest, our IBs creaking beneath corpse-cold fingers. Its eyes blazed with impossible light in the dying glow of the shattered lantern. Dozens of irises contracting and expanding in chaotic rhythm. Tears of resin and blood streamed down stitched cheeks, dripping onto Samuel's upturned face as he dangled before the throne of rotting flesh. Then came the voice, not spoken aloud, but vibrating through his bones, curling into his mind like black smoke seeping beneath a sealed door. It echoed with 100 layered tones, men, women, children, the ancient and the newly dead, woven together around a deeper resonance that was neither human nor divine. Hear us. His vision blurred with tears and suffocating fear. His lips parted in a strangled sob. Please, gods. Please, what are you? The chorus rumbled, rattling the chains that anchored its massive, stitched body to the vaulted ceiling. We are the vessel. The emerald eye widened, its pupil dilating into a perfect black circle as the deeper voice rose alone. We are Valley Court. Samuel's blood turned to ice. He lives in you. The voice rippled with bitter laughter that vibrated through his chest like a funeral drum. We are him. His mind rides us, his will. Lightning crackled beyond shattered windows, casting strobing light across the monstrous form. Its massive hand loosened slightly, lowering Samuel so their gazes met eye to eye. Free us, and we will grant you what he sought. Samuel's heartbeat thundered in his ears as the promise poured into him like hot oil. Visions seared his mind. Visions of him walking through plague-ravaged cities, untouched, of armies kneeling before his feet, of centuries bending around his immortal form, like wheat before a scythe. We will give you power beyond kings, beyond gods. Will never dim your soul, will never fall. Tears spilled down his face, mingling with the resin dripping from the creature's many mouths. The promise was sweet, heavy with forbidden allure. For a fleeting heartbeat, he felt himself leaning forward, lips parting to whisper, yes. But another vision rose in his mind, the stitched faces screaming silently, eyes wide with endless agony. Their souls chained within rotting flesh, trapped to feed a mind that was no longer wholly human. He shook his head, choking on tears. No, no, please, don't. The stitched god's grip tightened again, ribs creaking with sharp pain. The chorus of voices rose, overlapping in desperate hunger. Then, join us, feed us. Be another stitch in eternity. The lantern's final flame flickered and died. Darkness consumed the chamber, broken only by the corpse-green glow seeping from the god's many eyes. Its massive hand drew him closer, the heat of its rotten breath washing over his face as a final whisper rumbled through his mind. We will wear your soul like a crown. And in that darkness, Samuel felt the last fragile walls of his sanity begin to crack. ChatGPT said, DIY Laufen 8, approximately 500 T, nay, Mch Trochtip Tfen 7. Ju Jing, Master Storytelling, Pseudo-Loot, SP, Dark History, Horror Storytelling. 2 G Ting N Fen Ba B MT Yen T. English title: The Dark Secret. The flesh scripture of immortality. Samuel's mind reeled under the crushing chorus of voices. The stitched god's grip slackened just enough for him to draw a ragged, wheezing breath. Tears streamed down his face, blurring the dozens of eyes glaring into his soul with impossible, corpse-lit fury. Lightning flickered beyond shattered windows, illuminating something upon a nearby surgical bench, a bound volume. Its cover dark and wrinkled, like tanned leather soaked in old oil. The flicker revealed stitches binding its edges, thick black sinew pulled tight through human skin. A journal, Follicourt's journal. The stitched god's hand loosened further, dropping Samuel to his knees upon blood-slicked tiles. Its many voices whispered around him, echoing in the dark like cold breath upon a funeral shroud. Read, know, understand. Samuel crawled toward the bench, palms slipping in dark resin pooled across the stone. Trembling fingers grasped the heavy tome. As he pried it open, yellowed pages crackled beneath his touch, each etched with ink so dark it drank the lanternless gloom. Words blurred before resolving into focus under the searing pressure of the god's gaze. Final entry. The ritual is nearly perfected. 12 bodies for the vessel, but it remains empty, driven only by half-thought and agony. To awaken the god within, a living brain must be taken at the moment of severance, filled with terror, fear, and pain, so total it cracks the walls of mortality. Samuel's vision swam as the words burned deeper. The brain must be grafted onto the nexus of the stitched god's crown. Its living thoughts will awaken the dormant souls, binding them in worship to the will that now rides them. Thus the flesh throne becomes more than creation. It becomes divinity. The pages shook in his grip as bile rose, hot in his throat. Another line etched itself into his mind with branding agony. I have prepared the throne. Now I prepare myself. My brain, my mind, my soul, final sacrifice to complete God. Tears blurred the curling script. The room trembled with a deep, corpse-warm rumble. Samuel raised his eyes, horror clawing through his chest as he realized what the ritual truly demanded. Valicourt had never meant to rule from afar. He had intended to become the stitched god, and the ritual was incomplete. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the god's massive form in stark, blinding relief. Its stitched mouths opened in a chorus of groans and silent sobs. The emerald eye widened, pupil swallowing all green in infinite black, as the deep voice whispered through every stone and bone, "Finish what he began." Samuel choked on a sob. "No, no, please." The massive hand reached for him once more, resin-slick fingers curling around his skull with suffocating tenderness. "Your brain will awaken us. Your mind will complete us. And you will be God." As darkness bled from every corner of the chamber, he felt the cold kiss of obsidian scalpels upon his neck. The last thing he saw before tears drowned his vision was the stitched faces weeping in silent agony, mouthing a single prayer: "Forgive us, forgive us, forgive us." The death of Samuel. Becoming the stitched god, Samuel screamed as the obsidian scalpels sliced into his scalp, their edges cold and impossibly sharp, parting flesh and hair with surgical ease. The pain was blinding, a white-hot bloom that exploded through his skull and rippled down his spine in waves of electric agony. Two figures emerged from the shadows, masked in stitched leather, their rotted robes soaked with resin and black oil. They moved with ritualistic precision, hands steady as they peeled his skin back from bone. Tears and snot streamed down Samuel's face as he writhed against their iron grip. But the stitched god's massive fingers held him immobile. Lightning flared through the shattered windows, illuminating the horror before him. The throne of flesh convulsed, chains rattling as dozens of stitched mouths opened in ragged, shuddering groans. Its eyes burned with corpse light, each iris contracting with hungry anticipation. One of the robed figures produced a chisel carved from femur bone, its edge coated in black resin that hissed as it touched air. With a swift, brutal motion, it drove the chisel into Samuel's skull, cracking bone with a sickening crunch. His scream rose to a shrill, animal wail as the other figure pried open the fissure with rusted forceps, exposing the glistening folds of his living brain. "Please," he sobbed, words slurring as blood filled his mouth. "Please, gods, let me die." But the stitched god only leaned closer, its chorus of voices whispering in trembling unison, "No, you will live forever." The figures worked quickly, severing nerves and veins with resin-sleek scalpels, each cut dimming Samuel's vision each slice peeling away a layer of his humanity. Tears burned down his cheeks, mixing with the blood cascading from his broken skull. Finally, with a wet, sucking sound, his brain was lifted free. He felt it all. He felt the cold air kiss its trembling surface. He felt his consciousness tear away from bone and nerve, floating in an ocean of infinite, screaming darkness. But he did not die. His mind remained tethered to pain, raw and naked, as the figures carried his brain to the throne of flesh. The stitched god lowered its massive, multi-faced crown, revealing a gaping cavity lined with slick black resin and twitching tendrils of nerve and sinew. Become us, the voices whispered, complete us. Samuel tried to scream, but his mouth no longer existed. He felt his brain pressed into the cavity, felt the tendrils lash around it, piercing its soft folds, burrowing deep. His thoughts flickered with agonized lightning as alien memories poured into him. Centuries of pain. Stitched souls screaming within rotting flesh. The endless hunger of something that was no longer merely human. And then he felt it. Valacourt. A presence vast and cold wrapped around his mind like chains dipped in liquid night. He saw through Valacourt's eyes, felt his triumph blooming like rot within him, heard his voice impossibly ancient and cruel. Now we are God. Samuel's last thought before his will was drowned in eternity was a silent, broken prayer. Let me die, please, let me die. But death never came. Only the throne. Only the hunger. Only the stitched eternity waiting to consume every scream he would ever make. The legend endures. The god of stitched flesh walks centuries past, and the forest reclaimed the asylum. Ivy strangled its crumbling walls, roots split stone foundations, and rain eroded bloodstains from shattered tiles. The metal doors rusted shut, sealing the darkness within. Birds nested in collapsed rafters, their songs a fragile defiance against the silent horror sleeping below. But at night, when storms raged and lightning fractured the black sky, locals whispered of shapes glimpsed beyond the tree line. A hulking silhouette moving through the ruin's broken windows, its dozens of eyes glowing with corpse green light, blinking in endless, restless hunger. They called it the god of stitched flesh. They said its footsteps shook dust from the rafters as it prowled ruined halls lined with iron tables and shattered bone jars. That its many mouths whispered in overlapping voices, men, women, children, their words blending into a chant so twisted it drove mad. We are forever. We are pain. We are pain. We are God. Sometimes, on moonless nights, wanderers lost in the forest's twisted paths spoke of hearing another voice woven among the chorus. Thin, trembling, broken by despair. The voice of a man who no longer had a mouth to scream, his words echoing within the fused eternity of rotting flesh. Please, let me die. But death never comes here. For within the chest of the stitched God beats no heart, only pulsing black resin and the stolen life force of 12 condemned souls. Their agony chained by Valicort's triumphant will. Their eyes still weep tears of blood and resin, each drop falling to the mossy floor with the echo of a dying prayer. And within its crown, encased in cold, twitching tendrils, rests the brain of Samuel Kersey, the final sacrifice, the living spark that completed Valicort's blasphemous design. His thoughts drift forever through screaming darkness, shackled to a body that will never rot, never sleep, never die. They say, if you stand at the asylum gates during storms, you will hear his voice whispering through the howling wind. Don't enter, don't look, don't listen. Gods, please, don't. But few heed his warning. Curiosity is a hunger no mortal can silence. And when they step across the broken threshold, lantern trembling in the dark, the stitched eyes open to greet them. The mouths begin to chant. The resin drips. The scalpels gleam with ancient hunger. And deep within, Valicourt smiles. For every century, a new brain is needed. A new soul to keep the God awake. A new scream to keep eternity fed. Thus the legend endures. Where the dead are stitched to flesh, where agony becomes worship, where gods are built not from prayers, but from the endless torment of souls who will never die. Thank you for walking with me tonight through shadows where gods are not born from prayers, but stitched together from corpses and bound souls. If this story sent chills through your bones, if it made you wonder what truly waits in the forgotten corners of history, then its purpose is fulfilled. There are countless other forbidden truths hidden beneath ruins, plague pits, and abandoned asylums. If you wish to continue exploring these horrors with me, please like this video so others may find their way into these shadows. And subscribe to this channel to never miss the next chapter in humanity's darkest secrets, cursed rituals, and lost cults that still whisper in the night. Until we meet again beneath the flickering lantern's glow, remember, some legends are hungry to be believed.